Okay, welcome back. We are starting, we're coming back to chapter 49 of Genesis. We're in the middle of Jacob's words to his sons, where he's blessing them and basically saying, giving a glimpse of the future for them, particularly in where they will settle and when they come into the land, what their tribes will, some of the distinguishing marks of their tribes. I wanted to start with a little map I had promised last time of the 12 tribes of Israel, how they were set up. So you can see this. I'm going to make it a tad smaller, and I know it. Okay, there we go. All right, can everyone see the whole map together? Okay, so you'll notice that a couple things, the way it's organized. Judah is the most prominent here in the south, and Simeon, if you'll notice, is inside of Judah. So when he says last time, he said to them, there were two tribes, two brothers who would not really have a land. They would be scattered in Israel. Remember who those were, the two brothers?
Levi.
Yeah. Levi and Simeon are the two. And why were they going to be scattered? If you remember, what did they do to just mess
But
that
Levi
up?
was a priest. It was from the priests, and they don't get land.
Yeah, that's the result of it, is that they're going to, the Levites are going to be the priests, and they're not going to have land. They're going to be scattered in every tribe. They're going to be everywhere. They're not going to have any kind of land for an inheritance. Their inheritance is the Lord. But what was the reason why Levi and Simeon would be scattered? Well, there was
Are
something they
those the
did.
two that basically killed all the?
Yes, yes. They brought trouble on Jacob when they sought revenge for the defiling of Dinah, and they went and killed all the men of Shechem and just caused, I mean, that was just overdoing it, a violent act. God used it to save the day because Jacob was about to enter into a covenant with them. But even so, it was an evil thing to do, and they are going to lose that inheritance because of it. And again, it's interesting how they mean it for evil. God uses it for good. Good things come of it, but it's still evil. It's not a good thing. So the Levites become priests because that's a good thing, the priesthood. But it came because of that act which scattered them around. Judah is prominent down south, and so Simeon will start off given sort of a land, but they are going to be absorbed into Judah, and they will sort of cease to exist as an individual tribe. Reuben, you'll notice he's the firstborn, but look at his territory. It's just a little corner here he's given. It's sort of on the tail end. It's one of the first, it's even on the east side of the Jordan, which is just the least significant parts. In fact, they don't even have to fight. These three tribes, Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben, they don't have to fight for their territory. They just take it because no one's living there. It's just, they just take it. It's not really valuable land. And Reuben is given a little corner, but wait a minute, he's the firstborn. Why is he dished off to the side? What's wrong with him?
Because of what he did to his father's concubine.
Yeah, he slept with his father's concubine. That's a problem. And again, it was more than just a sexual fantasy of his. That the purpose of that was it was an act of rebellion, like what Absalom did to David, and just it was a coup. It was basically exalting himself and publicly humiliating his father. Horrifying thing to do. And
Manasseh seems to have a lot of land there.
yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. You'll notice here that Ephraim and Manasseh are in the center of everything. Who are they, and what makes them so special?
The sons of Joseph. Joseph.
They're the sons of Joseph. Yeah, absolutely. And Ephraim will be exalted above Manasseh. So it's not about quantity as it is about quality of territory. Again, this side of Manasseh is not that significant as far as property. Again, they take it without trouble. This side's a little bit more important, but you'll notice with Manasseh, there are actually two territories. There's East Manasseh and West Manasseh, divided by the Jordan River. And so we can see Joseph gets a double portion of the inheritance because he gets two tribes. And Manasseh, he is the oldest son of Joseph. He gets a double inheritance of land, although Ephraim will be the one that is the greater, because this is the more significant land, Ephraim. We'll find out that, in fact, later on, when the kingdoms divided, the northern nation of Israel, northern kingdom of Israel, is sometimes called Ephraim. It just is absorbed. Everything sort of centers on that. And the south is called Judah. These are clearly the two tribes. Now, I want you to notice a couple things. How many sons of Jacob are there?
Well,
There are 12. And you can name them all: Joseph and Levi and Simeon and Judah and so forth. But then how many tribes are there that inherit land? So they're
10,
tribes. So you look at their names up here. How many names of tribes do you see up here?
See 12.
There are 12. But you'll notice the tribes are not the same as the sons. Levi is not listed, and neither is Joseph. Those are sons, but the tribes then become Ephraim and Manasseh instead of Joseph, and Levi is removed because he doesn't get a land there. So he's not really considered one of the 12 tribes. So when they take the census, they don't count the Levites. They count the 12 tribes based upon the names mentioned here. But now there's one more thing. We mentioned how Simeon is going to lose his territory. So take Simeon and absorb it into Judah. How many territories are there? Well, if you look at the map here, you will see that there are also 12 territories, even with the loss of Simeon, because Manasseh has 2 territories, East Manasseh and West Manasseh, as well as Ephraim and Gad and all these other places. So however you break it down, even though the names are a little bit different, there is 12 is the number. 12 is the number. 12 sons, 12 tribes, 12 territories. However you want to break it down, there might be some different names to it, but they are, the number 12 is preeminent here going forward. So with that, let's come back up here and finish up our words of Joseph. And I was going to go big here, and we'll skip ahead. All right, so Genesis 49, I think we left off last time with
Dan.
Okay, Issachar was the last one we left with. Now we move on to Dan. So let's take a look at that, 16 to 18. Let's start with that. Teresa, would you read that for us?
sure. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper in the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that his riders fall backwards. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. Raiders,
We're going to stop
Shall-
right there for a second.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, we'll stop right there. So let's talk about Dan for a minute here. So Dan, you know what his name means? Dan is a judge. Like when the name Daniel means God is my judge. And so Dan is a phrase of judge. So Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Okay, so we have a mixed thing with Dan. On the one hand, verse 16 sounds pretty good, right? His tribe shall judge his people. Okay, that's good. But then what's the next thing it says?
he's going to be a serpent,
It'd be a serpent
a viper by the path.
in the way, a viper. Now, what do you make of that?
It's really not good.
Yeah. And what does he say that viper will do?
He bites the horse's heels, so that the riders will fall backwards.
It's the horse's heels. All right. So let's talk about that for a second. Having been through Genesis, what's your take on a serpent and a viper and biting a heel?
Goes back to Eden.
It does remind you of that, doesn't it? What part are we thinking of here?
After God turned him into a serpent for leading Adam and Eve to eat the tree of life.
Yeah, he's already described as a serpent, and but he says you'll be on your belly because of that. He curses him. But yeah, this serpent and the serpent, what's the significance of being a serpent?
You're just
Uh,
deceptive. You're deceptive.
yeah, deceptive.
Forked tongue,
Say it again, I'm sorry.
forked tongue.
Yeah, it's a deceptiveness about him. And even the describing biting the horse's heels is interesting, because isn't that what the serpent said? He would bruise your heel regarding the son. I'm not exactly sure what all that means of biting the horse's heels and his rider falls backward, but he's describing this two ways. He's like, he's gonna be judged, but there's something evil, something wrong with Dan, if you will. This is sort of if I could say it that way, maybe the devil's tribe. Something wrong with him. And it's significant because in Revelation, if you remember when we went through Revelation, and when the 144,000 are listed, they give a census of the 144,000, and they name all the different tribes. 12,000 from the tribe of Judah, 12,000 from the tribe of Reuben. And we noticed at that last time that one of the tribes was missing. And that was the tribe of Dan. Dan is missing in the census of Revelation. I think it was 7, something like that.
I have a note that
Yeah.
says Dan, whose name meant judge, fathered an aggressive tribe that would also judge in the nation, but would not be known for moral stature or religious faithfulness.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, when you go forward in the history of Dan, in the book of Judges, I can't remember the exact chapter, toward the end of the book of Judges, the whole tribe of Dan goes apostate. And they go after, they set up they take an idol, worship this idol, and they even take a Levite as their own priest to worship this idol. And it's really just to show that the chaos and it show the depravity of there are two tribes that really show the depravity of Israel. One is Dan and the other is Benjamin at the end, when they have that civil war and horrible.
I wonder what Dan is thinking when Jacob is saying these words. He's prophesying, and his Dan, he probably saying, what?
Yeah, I don't know. When we go down to our map here I want to see where Dan is. So Dan is located here.
Right. By the way, I noticed there's also a city of Dan way up north.
Yes, there is a city of Dan.
Yeah.
Correct. But it should be noted, and this is really interesting, because it's kind of like you have these 12 tribes, and one of them is set apart so that it even brings this declaration of from Jacob that sort of is an aside almost. I wait for your salvation, O Lord, as he's kind of reflecting upon, I think, this evil and this corruption that we need the Lord to save us. So
when the tribe of Dan is seeking further territory, that's in Judges 18.
yes,
And
yes.
then
Thank you.
you're welcome.
In Judges 18, that's the chapter. If you want to read the story of Dan, you get a sense of it. They're out of control. They are really out of control, and they are strong. They are leading ways. So they're, in one sense, they're men like the Nephilim, like the men of renown that you admire, but they are of the devil in a sense. They are not faithful. And so we remind, I wait for your salvation, O Lord. It also kind of, you can see the parallel with Dan. When Jesus has his 12 disciples, what does he say about his 12 disciples? Have I not chosen you, the 12? But one of you is what?
Viper.
Yeah, close to that. Yeah, one of you is a devil, he says. Jesus says that of Judas. He's like, have I not chosen? This is after the feeding of the 5,000 and everyone's leaving him, and he says, do you want to leave also? And Peter says, to whom shall we go? You have the words of life. And he says, have I not chosen you? And yet one of you is a devil. It's like even there, it's like he's prophesying that. And when Judah, he's kind of like Dan is sort of that one devil tribe, this traitor amongst them, the Judas, if you will. All right, let's pick it up from there. Let's read the next three, 19 to 21. Jack, you want to get those three for us?
Raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid at their heels. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal delicacies. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns.
Okay. All right. So we're told of Gad, raiders shall raid, but he'll raid back. Okay, got it. Let's see where Gad is on the map here. Why Gad is vulnerable to raiders. Okay. All right. That says a little bit about Gad. You can kind of see that. What's the significance? What
Is
about
that
Gad?
the desert area?
Yeah, this is the desert area, but you'll notice who's right next to Gad.
Reuben,
Reuben's below him.
Manassas,
Manasseh's above him.
Oh,
Ammon.
Ammon. What's Ammon? Who is Ammon?
Ammon was one of Lot's. It was named for Lot's son.
Yeah, Lot had two daughters, and then he had two sons by his two daughters, Ammon and Moab. And so those are your two, Ammon and Moab here. And they ended up being hostile toward Israel. So Philistia, Moab, and Ammon are sort of your classic enemies of them. They had a better relationship with the Arameans up north. And the Edomites, they're a mixed bag with them, but Moab and Ammon always just give them trouble.
You could see Gad would be subject to raiders because it's on the wrong side of the river. Somebody's going to be attacking you from the east.
Exactly right. Exactly right. They're gonna deal with a lot of trouble on that side there, given the pressure from Ammon. That Manasseh is not going to feel so much, and I guess Reuben might deal with a little bit too. But looks like with Reuben, it's more mountainous area here. You got Mount Nebo here, so it's probably not as easy threat. I'm going to guess there's probably the location of Gad is going to deal with some people who want to raid and take things. So that's about all I can say about that. But the next one is
Philistia the Philistines?
Yes. In fact, Philistia is the Palestinians.
Yeah.
The Philistines, the Palestinians, the same name. And you notice Gaza here. So really, all the trouble in the Middle East is still the same thing between Israel and the Philistines.
Yep.
The Jews and the Philistines. Ancient battles, man. I tell you. Asher. Okay, rich food and delicacies. That sounds pretty good. Let's see where Asher is located. Why is Asher? Oh, well, I can see why.
The seafood.
Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, they're in a great location. All the trade that's gonna come through here because they're right on the coastline, the Mediterranean. They're safe from enemies. They're kind of, guarded with Naphtali as a buffer here, and the Arameans are dealing with them fine. But and Tyre and Sidon, before their destructions, were pretty notable, wealthy places. In fact, remember Tyre when we went through Ezekiel? The king of Tyre is basically compared to the devil himself, exalted in his pride, and he's going to be cast down. They're so proud because they're so rich. So this is a wealthy area. Asher's going to be a nice area.
Is that what's part of called the Fertile Crescent?
Yes, the Fertile Crescent goes from this side here of Israel all the way up to Haran and Syria and then it comes down on the other side of by the Euphrates River. Basically, if you chart the journey of Abraham from Ur to Canaan, he goes north and then he comes down south. That's the Fertile Crescent he walks. He moves. All right. Naphtali. All right. Let loose that bears beautiful fawns. I don't know if anybody
Yeah, the NASB says he gives beautiful words. So I was curious what that little number right near fawns says. Click on that and see what that says.
I can't on my thing. I just kind of copied it, but I can take a quick look.
I have a note that says deer-like speed and agility marked Naphtali's military prowess.
This just says he gives beautiful words. That's strange.
Mine says here, the tribe of Naphtali will flourish, nourished by the rich natural resources of Upper Galilee. But Asher and Naphtali are flourishing. They're in a great location. You got the sea here and all the commerce that would go through Asher. And then Naphtali, you're right by the Sea of Galilee. It's a flourishing area. It's looking good for them. So they'll have a nice territory here. Okay, great territory. We'll call it that. All right. Territory, can spell it right. All right, let's pick it up there. Let's get to Joseph. Joseph, I think, is a little bit more interesting here. 22 to 26. Bob Thomas, you want to get that for us?
Sure. Joseph is a fruitful bow by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers bitterly attack him, shot at him, and harassed him severely, yet his bow remained unmoved. His arms were made agile. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of your father, who will help you, by the Almighty, who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the beasts, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents. Up to the bounties of the everlasting hills, may they be on the head of Joseph and on the brow of him who was set apart from his brothers.
Okay. Wow. All right.
Mm.
Tell us how you really feel, Jacob, here. What does he say about Joseph here? Some of the key words for him.
He's fruitful.
Fruitful. Yep. Yep. He'll say something about in verse 23 and 24.
He's going to be attacked, but
Mm.
yet the bow remained unmoved, and it's like he doesn't fight back.
So it's bitterly attacked.
Yeah, I think he's thinking of his brothers and Potiphar's wife and people like that.
Yeah, he's actually, this is the one part he's actually speaking in the past tense about what he's been through. He was bitterly attacked. He's recalling his past here, and harassed, which is true. That's what we read his story. Yet he remained unmoved. And why was that the case? How was he able to withstand all that?
One thing, he's a picture of Christ.
Yeah. But because of the mighty one of Jacob, because of God. The shepherd. The stone of Israel. Now that's interesting that Jacob says stone. You remember a stone? What was the significance of a stone for Jacob?
Oh, he had put his head on it at Bethel. when he-
Yeah, that's a reference to Bethel, when he has that vision of he puts a stone for a pillow and he takes a nap, and then he has the vision of the stairway to heaven, and he says, "This is the house of God," and the Lord appears to him there, and he takes that stone and he turns it into a pillar and an altar and names the place Bethel, the house of God. Just a great scene.
Mm.
He's recounting all of that, how Joseph bitterly attacked and harassed, yet God, the Lord, who appeared to him at Bethel, the shepherd who's been with Jacob all his life, the mighty one of Jacob, has cared for him and helped him. By the God of your father will help you. So he'll be blessed. Yeah. Blessed by the Almighty. The blessings of your father beyond the blessings. He says it how many times here? And beyond the blessings of my parents up to the bounty of the everlasting hills. May all these blessings be on the head of Joseph. Set apart from his brothers. Now we come down here and you look at the map and look at all the territory that would belong to Joseph. It's the center of the heart of the promised land here. Manasseh and Ephraim, that enormous area. It's almost like as much area for Joseph as almost everybody else. There's so much land given to him, and it's good land. It's especially at this side of Manasseh and Ephraim here. It's really in the center of everything. And you'll find that a lot of before Jerusalem is taken, before Judah really rises to become the kingdom, the focus is really on Ephraim. This area is so much of the salvation. I think, if I'm not mistaken, does Joshua come from Ephraim? I can't remember. That.
I want to say yes.
I think he does. But so many significant figures, so many different significant places are in this area, and before it shifts to Jerusalem and Judah. So, in fact, that's why the Samaritans, this area here, Manasseh and Ephraim, this is what in Jesus' time would have been called Samaria. That's why they felt like, we have just as strong a connection to God as you do, Judah and Jews. We're from Joseph. And look at Joseph was clearly the special one, the one beloved by Jacob. And that whole interaction with the Samaritan woman where she says, "Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well to Joseph?" And they were the descendants of Joseph, the Samaritans. They held such a special place. Okay. All right. So Joseph's doing good. And then finally, we end up with Benjamin. Let's see. Claudette, you want to get that for us?
Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning, devouring the prey, and at evening, dividing the spoil.
Yeah. Well, how about that? A ravenous devouring the prey. Do you know what's going to happen with Benjamin later on? Particularly in the book of Judges. So I think it's the end of the book of Judges, is a civil war.
Yeah, the Benjaminites were pretty horrible at the end of Judges.
Yes.
They were almost like a Sodom and Gomorrah kind of attitude, mindset.
Almost. I think it was worse than Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, and
I know Saul came from them.
Saul and Paul.
And Saul was the first king. But they were mighty warriors. They were fierce. And it took all 11 tribes to gang up on Benjamin. in order to defeat that. And even then, the Benjaminites won the first few rounds of those battles. Fierce warriors. And Saul, the first king, came from Benjamin. So it's really they are notable in their strength, but they are but like Dan, who is also inspiring in one sense, judge, powerful, but yet there's something evil and depraved about them too. A ravenous wolf. Again,
Can you put the map back up there? I want to see where Benjamin is.
yeah,
Small.
it's
It
not
is-
very big.
Yeah,
right
it's
there, but it's-
small and it was in the time of the northern and southern kingdom. It became part of the southern kingdom with Judah.
Yes.
It's
Mm.
very
When they
small.
split, you're right. It was Benjamin, Judah, and Simeon that was the southern kingdom. Absolutely. You know who else was of the who another very famous person was from the tribe of Benjamin.
Saul the apostle, Paul the
Exactly
apostle.
right, Paul. Saul the apostle. Paul was of the tribe of Benjamin too. Very good, Jack. Extra credit. Yeah, so Benjamin is a pretty dark past, and you kind of get a sense of this. You have the Benjamin ravenous wolf versus Judah the lion, and that's setting up your kingdom. You've got the very first king is Saul of the tribe of Benjamin, but he is powerful, but powerful like a wolf, and he's going to fail. But Judah will bring forth David, of course, and we'll have the rightful king. He'll be named there. So, okay. Let's finish up our chapter here. Rob Roy, you want to get the 28 to 33?
Okay. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each with the blessing suitable to him. Then he commanded them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron, the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah, his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah, his wife. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites. When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people.
All right. So now we have the final instructions and death of Jacob. So after he blesses them, what does he say? What is his final instructions to them?
Make sure you bury me in Hebron, where this cave is.
Yeah, bury me, with my fathers in the cave in the field of Ephron, the one property that Abraham bought, if you remember that story.
Mhm.
And to bury Sarah.
Mhm.
I don't know if we have him on the map here of where that was. You remember? I can't remember where it was exactly on the map. Well, somewhere in there. But there's a cave, and so notice he lists out those who were buried with him.
Yeah, it's in Hebron. I don't know if that's on the map.
Was it Hebron?
Yeah.
And
Hebron. Oh, there it is, right there in
yeah,
Judah.
right there in the middle.
Want to see that?
Mm.
Okay. So that's in Hebron
Mm.
of Judah. So right there, we're getting a sense of, okay, even though Joseph is going to get all those blessings and everything like this, we're coming back to Judah again. There's something special about this Judah, who is a rising star among the 12. And of those buried there, he mentions several. It's like it seems to be a prime location. Those buried in this cave. And who are those buried in this cave?
Isaac and Rebekah and Leah.
Abraham and Sarah.
Okay, so it's Abraham and Sarah. Isaac and Rebecca,
Yeah,
and then,
Leah.
yeah, now it's going to be Jacob and Leah. Huh. What about Rachel?
Um,
Where is she buried?
yeah, oh,
Is she still alive?
Oh,
no.
no.
She died at
She died
childbirth.
first. She died when Benjamin was born.
Right.
I thought it was a trick question.
No, no, no. Where do they bury the survivors?
Where did he bury Rachel? I forgot.
Rachel was buried in Bethlehem
Oh.
along the way. So if we come down here, so up here in Bethlehem is where Rachel was buried, apart from the others. It's really interesting. So you're noticing here, it's like, okay, even though Joseph gets this great blessings from the father, he is the son of Rachel, but it's Leah is really the one considered the wife of Jacob, the first, the most significant, the most honored of Jacob's women is Leah. Even though he didn't love her very much. He wasn't very good to her. She's the honored one. She's the one whom, by deception, certainly Laban did something wicked, but that was the God's plan, that Leah should be the honored one. And it's through Leah, we are saved through Leah. She's the one who gave birth to Judah. And it's in the line of Judah that we get David, and Christ comes from Leah, not from Rachel. So there we go. All right. So then what happens? Jacob dies. Okay.
I'm just picturing what, as soon as he died, these 12 must have just looked at each other kind of in a daze after what they just heard. Because some of them were thinking, no way. Dan's probably thinking, no way, I'm not going to be a serpent in the grass. But that was the prophecy.
Yeah, I don't know. And who knows if Dan didn't take it as a compliment. It's kind of cool to be a serpent. I mean, they have gangs named after serpents. The Egyptians worshiped the serpents. The Pharaoh had a serpent on his crown. Nothing wrong with a serpent. They're pretty incredible. I'd rather be a serpent than a bunny, right? That's not something that would be admirable. Yeah, it's interesting how they're going to go. Jacob makes this is a big deal for Jacob that he be buried there. What's the significance of him being buried in that cave with his fathers? I mean, why is this such a why is his burial? And Joseph will make the same thing. He'd make a big deal about his burial. Why does it matter?
Well, it's in the promised land for one thing, but I mean, it seems that's more important for Joseph, who at the time said that in Egypt when he wasn't in the promised land.
Yeah, this is the promised land. We would say it's an acknowledgement that even though he never owned anything there and lived there, he still trusts in God, believes that land is his because God said it, according to the word of God. He made that promise to them. And so Abraham, believing that, going to be buried there. And Abraham doesn't go back to Haran or Ur, his homeland. That's his home, even though he doesn't own anything there. That's what's amazing. He doesn't own any land there, and yet that's where he insists, that's where I'm buried. That's my land, even though I don't own it.
So he's picturing faith that he will own it, in a sense.
Yes. It's the and they talk about him. I don't know if they say here he was gathered to his people. It doesn't even say he died. He breathed his last and was gathered to his people. There is the hope of the resurrection is present in these. That's why they always say things like, and he slept with his fathers. Why do they keep referring to death as sleep in the Bible?
Because you don't really die.
Yeah, when you sleep, you wake up. There's a wake-up call. And I think I shared before, but one of the things that my Uncle Aram had wanted to make a point of at his funeral was that he says, when I maybe Elizabeth, you want to share that? What my uncle said about when the trumpet sounds, that what it will be at the last day?
Yeah, when the trumpet sounds, let me think now. In the last day,
He said it wouldn't be taps when the final
right,
trumpet blows.
it wouldn't be taps, which is the universal signal that the day is over, it's time to rest. It'll be reveille, which means get up and continue worshiping, continue serving.
It's time to get up. It's time to get up. You
Time to
know,
get,
and,
yes.
that's the hope. This hope of resurrection is there in the burial, because the pagans did not. Typically, most of the pagans burned their bodies. They had no use for the body. It was just trash. There's no hope for it. Just get rid of it. But they buried, and they buried in a cave, and they specific land that was important to them. Why does it matter? Well, it matters in that there is this hope of resurrection and this promise of an inheritance. That's the same thing for us as Christians. It's like we live in that hope that even though we live in this world doesn't belong to us right now. We will inherit it. It's ours in the inheritance. It's not right now. We're like Jacob and Abraham and Isaac, living as strangers in the world. It's not our home, but it will be. It will be. God has promised the new heavens and new earth to us, and in that day of resurrection, I don't know. And so these burials are symbolically significant. It's not as if, Jacob wouldn't inherit it if he wasn't buried there. God keeps his word no matter what. But the symbol of it reminds us of that great promise that God gave them. God will keep that promise. All right, so that ends chapter 49. Any comments or questions so far before we move on to our last chapter? Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not sure if we'll get through it all, but we've got about 10 minutes left. Let's keep going. Genesis 50. Let's see. Claudette, would you get that for us? 1 to 3.
Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for it, for that is how many are required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for 70 days.
Wow. All right. So Joseph weeps over his father. And then what does he do with his father's body?
Embalm him.
And embalms his father. And it takes 40 days. So it's a 40-day process. And then the Egyptians weep for 70 days. Wow. Okay. They have a profound connection to Jacob. Why? I mean, we think about it. Well, if it wasn't for Jacob, they'd all be dead. It was through Joseph that God saved the world, that he saved the Egyptians and all the world from this famine. And clearly, Jacob is through Joseph, I should say, and Jacob is his father, the one who sired him, the one who actually instructed him and enabled him to be such a wise, ruler of the people as well. So Jacob really shares in the honor that Joseph gets. So for 70 days they do this, and the embalming is very important. Now the Jews don't typically embalm; they just bury. But why is embalming really important in this case?
Well, I have a note that says it was an Egyptian practice designed to preserve the body after death, and so to maintain personal identity in the afterlife. It was not practiced in Israel. Here, the embalming preserves the body for transport back to Canaan.
Exactly right. That's why it's done, and they wouldn't have done it otherwise. But they need to bring this body back to Canaan land for a burial, and so the embalming is going to be very important for that kind of travel. So that's where we are now. Let's move on there. Days a week. There's a longer section here. We can break this down a little bit. Let's do verses 4 to 9. Elizabeth, would you get that for us?
Sure. And when the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, if now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, I am about to die. In my tomb that I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there shall you bury me. Now therefore let me please go up and bury my father, then I will return. And Pharaoh answered, go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. So Joseph went to bury his father. With him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as the household of Joseph, his brother, and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen.
All right.
And
So
there-
now, yeah, we'll stop right there. So now we have the funeral procession here.
Mhm.
Joseph gets permission from Pharaoh to bury his father. And let's talk about that entourage that goes with him. Who travels with Joseph?
Servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt,
Servant.
as well as the household of Joseph, his brothers, his father.
Yeah.
The Egyptians and Joseph's crew all go together.
All the servants of Pharaoh.
Mm.
A lot. All the servants of Pharaoh. The elders of his household. Whose household would that be? Would that be Pharaoh's household or Joseph's household?
I would say Pharaoh's.
Possibly. And the elders of the land of Egypt, all the household of Joseph, Joseph's brothers, and his father's household. How many people is this?
A lot.
Yeah. I mean, this has got to be hundreds, maybe even thousands of people going. This is a huge entourage going to do this. The only ones left are their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen, and somebody's got to watch over them. Okay, let's keep going. Verses 9 to 14. I want to see, make sure I got everyone read so far. Bob Fowler, would you get that for us?
And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a great company, very great company. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they lamented there with very great and grievous lamentation. And he made a mourning for his father 7 days. When the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning on the threshing floor of Atad, they said, this is a grievous mourning by the Egyptians. Therefore, the place was named Abel Mizraim. It is beyond the Jordan. Thus his sons did for him as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field at Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephraim the Hittite to possess as a burying place. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father.
Okay. So it's great entourage. Even now, it mentions chariots and horses as well. Horsemen traveling, verse 9, with a great company. And they come to the floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan. Now, I'm trying to get a sense of that. Did they actually cross the Jordan, go along here? The other side?
Doesn't make sense where the cave was.
Yeah, if it's here in Hebron, then they it sounds like they traveled across the Jordan though. Did anyone have a note on that about what's going on there?
Oh, he's going to Hebron, so which is on between Egypt and the Jordan. So I think when he says beyond the Jordan, when they crossed over the Jordan from when they first came into the promised land, that was a big deal to be beyond the Jordan.
Yeah, they went. They when they came as tribes later on, they come around from the east side here. They go around this way and they entered through the Jordan that way.
So now they're beyond the Jordan. They're in the That's like saying I'm in the promised land.
Okay, so they mean it. So when they say beyond the Jordan, they don't mean that they crossed the Jordan, that they were in this side of the Jordan.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
They're in the promised land. They're beyond the Jordan.
All right. So beyond the Jordan. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Great lamentation. And so much so that the Canaanites call it the mourning of the Egyptians. Abel Mitzrayim, I think, means something like grief or tears of the Egyptians. It's beyond the Jordan. So the Canaanites noticed this. Take note of this. You can imagine what that would have looked like as they're coming in there, and this huge entourage of chariots and horses in this funeral procession coming from Egypt to bury a man in that land. That's just stunning. And it would be like if in our area, just imagine some kind of like thousands of people coming from, I don't know,
Canada.
No, something more noble than that. Something, let's say, let's do maybe like, London or Paris or some great city, and they cross, and this huge entourage is coming in, and they're gonna perform some kind of a burial in Seabrook. It's just like, wow, that's a strange thing. That's a strange sight to see. This huge entourage, especially because the Egyptians, it's like they're the center of the world. They have no regard for Canaan in that land. There's nothing happening that's really that interesting for them. But here they're coming in and they're bringing this funeral procession for this one man to bury him in that field.
Well, and some of these people would have had to have gone to Egypt to buy food during all of this.
Oh yeah.
So they would recognize these people coming.
Yeah, oh yeah, they knew they're aware of each other. They're always been. Remember when the Battle of Jericho happens, and Rahab says to the spies, "Our hearts are trembling. We heard about what happened in Egypt." I mean, they're very familiar with each other. They're trade routes. They're not primitive people living in caves. Some of these societies are pretty advanced, and there's a lot of travel going on. Especially in that area. Egypt is constantly engaging with the cities up in Assyria and Babylon. They're always going up and back and forth. So they're very familiar with each other. But the Canaan land has been more of a pass-through territory. It's never been the center of a great kingdom. It was always sort of like just the middle ground that people would pass through. All right, let's finish up. Do we have time? Oh, it's getting so close and I got to run soon. Let's cut it off here and we'll pick up the last scene next week and we'll finish up Genesis. And then following that, we will be doing, we said Luke, correct?
Yep.
Make sure I got that right.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So let's see, are we on verse 15 of 50?
Yeah, we'll pick it up at verse 15.